Today, I want to introduce the teaching of total forgiveness. Now, it's possible that you have seen this before. The sermon that I have on total forgiveness has gone all over the world. There's almost no country that I haven't preached this sermon in. But I have been advised that I should put this into 10-minute talks. And so I've agreed to do this. And this is the first of a 10-minute talk on my sermon, Total Forgiveness. I never dreamed, ever, the day would come that what was the worst moment of my life, I mean in my whole life, would turn out to be so happy and so treasured. And so it happened while I was the pastor of Westminster Chapel. I won't tell you the date or the year, unless anybody think they can trace it and figure out who I'm talking about, because I cannot tell anybody ever what happened. But it was the worst moment that Louise and I had ever gone through. And that gave birth to this series of talks on total forgiveness. Well, here's what happened. What happened was so unfair and unjust. And I thought, Lord, why would you permit this? Here I am at Westminster Chapel. This is not my country. I didn't ask to stay here. You've put me here. And now, what am I going to do? The future was bleak. I mean, I thought I had no future. I thought it was over. And I couldn't tell anybody. It was just, those were horrible days. It happened in the providence of God that an old friend, his name Joseph Tson, it's spelled T-O-N, pronounced T-S-O-N. Well, Joseph Tson happened to be in London, and I invited him to come and see me, and decided while he was there, he is one person that I could tell this to. Now, if I'm totally honest, I thought that Joseph would just put his arm around me and say, well, R.T., you ought to be angry. Get it out of your system. I thought that's what he would say. And so I said, I've got something I've got to tell you. And I said, and I told him what happened. And at that time, he said, I want you to go fix me a cup of tea, and I need 15 minutes. I need to take a nap. My heart sank. I said, Joseph, you're going to fall asleep, and then you're going to have to go. He said, don't worry. I will be back. I'll come within 15 minutes. Well, I go prepared the cup of tea, and I just sat there waiting. I thought he's going to oversleep, and I'm not going to wake him up. But lo and behold, 15 minutes sharp, he came back. The tea, by this time, was getting cold. He took a sip. I never will forget what he said. This is what I call a cup of tea. And then he put it down, and I wasn't prepared for what followed. If I could narrow 25 years in London down to 15 minutes, it's when Joseph Tson looked at me and said, R.T., you must totally forgive them. For until you totally forgive them, you will be in chains. Release them, and you will be released. Nobody had ever talked to me like that in my life. I have to say, my parents didn't teach this to me. My old church back in Ashland, Kentucky didn't teach this to me. And I've had a number of mentors. Not one of them ever said anything like this to me. But Joseph Tson that day looked at me. It just so happened that a week ago, from the time that I'm recording this, I get a phone call from none other than Joseph Tson. He's now living in Portland, Oregon. He's 90 years old. I'm 89. He's a year older than me. And I was so thrilled to see him because he FaceTimed me. And there was Joseph Tone, the man who's changed my life. And I said, Joseph, I'm so glad to see you. And he kept saying how glad he was to see me. And he had been told how I referred to him in these talks all over the world. But as I looked at him, I wish I could get this over to you right now. It's not totally relevant to my teaching on total forgiveness, but I want to share it. You know, it's said of Stephen in the Old Testament, in Acts chapter 6, I think verse 10, that his face shone like that of an angel. Well, I wonder what that would look like. And I promise you, as I looked at Joseph Tone last week, we were doing that FaceTime, I said, this is an angel. I mean, I cannot tell you the look on his face. And Louise was sitting nearby. I said, honey, I want you to come quickly. I want you to look at this. And she just wasn't able. She said, I'm sorry, I can't come at this moment. Well, all I can tell you is that Joseph Tone phoned me. And then I said to him, well, Joseph, you know, when I tell the story, how you changed my life, I try to sound like you. And he laughed because he had heard that. RT, you must totally forgive them. Unless you totally forgive them, you will be in chains. Well, he smiled. And I just said, Joseph, I die 1,000 deaths at the thought that I had never met you. I wonder where I would be today if, in the providence of God, you had not come to me. I just thank God for you. And so that's what he said to me. No one had ever talked to me like that in my life. And then I remember saying, well, Joseph, I'm sorry, but I can't. I can't. And he said, you can and you must. Well, I'm going to tell you something. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And that's when you forgive the person who has betrayed you, let you down, hurt you, disappointed you, was ready to bury you, to let you be finished. And you not only forgive them, but you pray for them. And when you pray for them, you don't just say, well, Heavenly Father, I just commit them to you. No, because you probably wanted God to kill them. No, you can't do it that way. You have to come to the place that you ask God to bless them and mean it and say from your heart, God, I ask you to bless them. It's the hardest thing one ever does. But I can tell you it's when you cross over into the supernatural. Because when you pray for God to bless somebody who has hurt you and was willing to destroy you, and you pray for them, you've crossed over into the supernatural. This is what Jesus did when he was on the cross. The thief next to him was on one side ridiculing him, and then another thief was affirming him. And everybody around them was saying, he saved others, he cannot save himself. And we're told that Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. Well, that's what Jesus prayed. And I can tell you this, if you can bring yourself to the place that you ask God to bless them and forgive them, that is when you're beginning to be just a little bit like Jesus. It will be the finest thing you ever do. It will be your finest hour. You will never be sorry, and God will use this, and the day will come, whereas it was the worst thing that ever happened to you, it will be seen as the best thing. That's what it was with me, and it will happen to you.